So Exodus 33 it comes on the back of we read about the story of the nation of Israel. God has set them free from Egypt miraculously, where they were all slaves. He's brought them out. He's done miraculous things. He's parted the Red Sea. He's provided for them. I mean, he's done one crazy miracle after another that's blessed the people. And yet the people are fickle. The people are disbelieving. God has taken them out of Egypt. He's got them on the journey to the lands that he has promised to give them. And yet the people just keep on not trusting God despite all that he's done. Just again and again and again. And actually, it's a good question for us here. What in your lives can you remember has God done already? We're so quick to look forward. We're so quick to look at what we haven't got now. But if you were to look at the story of your life, how has he moved in your life? What are the amazing things that he has done? Can you call them to mind? And then ask yourself the question on the back of that. Do you still trust him? Do you still trust him? I think we're products often of the world that we live in. We're so not very good at waiting. We're so not very good at being thankful. The world we live in is a bit of an instantaneous world, so it's always on to the next thing that I haven't got. What are the things that you can call to mind that he has done in your life? Words that he's spoken, maybe. Do you still trust him? Is he the object of your worship? This was the problem for the people in this story, that God had done one amazing thing after another, proved himself faithful again and again and again, and then they were just on to the next thing they wanted to complain about, and they wouldn't trust him. And so just before Exodus 33, Moses is away with God on the mountain. The people get restless. They simply won't wait and be patient, and so they gather up a bunch of gold and they make themselves a golden calf and they start worshipping that. Just won't trust him. They just won't make him the object of their worship. And so that's the background to this, that the people have just been disbelieving. They're worshipping a golden calf. Moses comes down. Loads of terrible things happen. And then we come to Exodus chapter 33. And we start with verses 1 to 3. It says, "Then the Lord said to Moses, 'Leave this place, you and the people you brought up out of Egypt, and go up to the land I promised on oath to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying, I will give it to your descendants. I will send an angel before you and drive out the Canaanites, Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. Go up to the land flowing with milk and honey, but I will not go with you, because you are a stiff-necked people, and I might destroy you on the way.'" You know, I woke up this morning with a stiff neck. There are certain bits of scripture that stay with you. I've said this before recently. The phrase stiff-necked has always stayed with me. I've always had a fear because I know my ability to be a stiff-necked person. That's my wife. She'll confirm it. My ability to be a stiff-necked person, to know that God is saying something to me and to ignore it. It's a bit like when you're in somewhere and someone is trying to catch your eye and get your attention, and you kind of see they're doing that, and so you make sure you look away. And you know, at the corner of your eye, you can see they're looking at you, trying to get your attention, and so you busy yourself with someone else to avoid it. God considered the nation of Israel, his people, a stiff-necked people. They would not do what he said. They would not give their attention to him. They would not be obedient. And my prayer constantly is, God, don't let me be a stiff-necked person. Because I know what I'm like. I know my ability to want to ignore God saying something to me. whether that's he wants you to do something, or whether that's about something sinful that I'm doing that I know he disapproves of, I just want to ignore his gaze upon me. Don't be a stiff-necked person. Are you a stiff-necked person? We don't want to be that. He says, I will not go with you because you are stiff-necked people, and I might destroy you on the way. Now, I read a book over the summer. In fact, I read several books over the summer. Read a book by a lady called Wendy Mann about the presence of God, hosting the presence of God. It's a very good book. She speaks briefly about this passage, which is where I've kind of stolen the whole thought from. I never really thought about this before. God promises his people success. He just won't be present with them. So if you read what he says, you go now to the land that I've promised you, and I will send an angel, and I will drive everybody out, and I'll make sure you're successful, and you'll have the land that's flowing milk and honey. It's just that I won't go with you. I've never really thought about that before. Okay, he's promised them success. He said, I'll make sure that you're victorious. I'll make sure that you have the land. I'll make sure you won't have any enemies. I'll make sure that you have everything. I'll make sure you inherit what I promised you'll inherit. It's just that my presence won't go with you. I've never thought about that before. Never really noticed about that before. And I wonder sometimes if that seems like a reasonable deal to us. That if we were to have success as a church or as a Christian, however you choose to define success, but not know God's presence, would we be okay with that? So if we as a church had people, 20 or 30 people coming in every week, our numbers growing, we couldn't contain ourselves in this building, all our hubs growing, like kids coming out of our ears, youth work all over the place, money pouring in, influence with the local council, whatever it might be, but not have the presence of God with us, would we think that's a reasonable deal? That's okay. Would we be tempted to go for that? To think, well, yeah, now we're getting somewhere. We're getting somewhere. God isn't with us, but we're getting somewhere. By all earthly measures of growth and success. Would we be okay with that? Or would it give us pause for thought? That we could end up being a people who want God for what he does, his benefits, but not for who he is. That we would say, well, we want you for your power, and we want you for your grace, and we want you for your miracles, and we want you to move in the things that we need to deal with. We want you for your favor. We want you to make things okay. We want salvation. We want your encouragement. But do you want him? Or do you just want the things that he brings? It's like, I guess, if you were, I've never experienced this, but if you were a phenomenally wealthy person with lots of influence, those sorts of people seem to attract plenty of friends. Why? Because they have influence, they have power, they have money. And so I want to be a friend of somebody like that. I don't want them, but I certainly want all the benefits that knowing them brings. I wonder if we can treat God like that sometimes. Certainly that's true in the Bible. We see that story again and again. They wanted his power and his promise of victory and all those things. They just didn't seem to want him. But I want all the benefits that come with you. I'm reminded of the letter written to the church in Ephesus at the beginning of the book of Revelation, which gives us a very clear warning. It's in Revelation 2, verses 2 to 5, and this letter's written by Jesus to the church. He says, I know your deeds, your hard work, your perseverance. I know that you cannot tolerate wicked people, that you've tested those who claim to be apostles but are not and found them false. You've persevered, you've endured hardships for my name, you've not grown weary. Yet I hold this against you. You have forsaken the love you had at first. Consider how far you've fallen. Repent and do the things you did at first. If you do not repent, I will come to you and remove your lampstand from its place. I always find passages like that are ones that are a bit of a wake-up call, ones that you want to ignore slightly. Jesus says to the church in Ephesus, he essentially says, you're nailing it, except you don't seem to want me. You're nailing it. You're doing all sorts of wonderful works. You're doing great, except you don't want me. It's essentially what he's saying to the church. We of course could always think, and would always think, that couldn't be us. That wouldn't be us. That wouldn't be me. But I think it can be perfectly possible, maybe even just subconsciously, to fall into this way of living. Oh, we're doing this, we're doing that. We're running this, we're running that. We're keeping going. We're doing all the Christian things. The list could go on and on. But do you want to be with him just because he's awesome to be with? We can get so busy making church happen. We can run this, we can run that. I can do all the things that Christians are supposed to do and be all the places that Christians are supposed to be. But do you want to be with God just because he's brilliant? Just because he's wonderful to be with? Moses, in our story, is horrified that God might send them into the promised land, but not go with them. If we pick up in Exodus 33 at verse 12. So God said to them, you go, I'll make sure you're successful, but I won't be with you. Let's do that again. As I said it. But Moses says to the Lord, you've been telling me lead these people, but you have not let me know whom you will send with me. You said I will know you by name, and you found favor with me. If you are pleased with me, teach me your way so that I may know you and continue to find favor with you. Remember that this nation is your people. The Lord replied, my presence will go with you and I will give you rest. Moses said to him, if your presence does not go with us, do not send us up from here. How will anyone know that you are pleased with me and with your people unless you go with us? What else will distinguish me and your people from all the other people on the face of the earth? And the Lord said to Moses, I will do the very thing you've asked because I'm pleased with you and I know you by name. Then Moses said, now show me your glory. Moses pleads with God for his presence. He doesn't care that he can go and be successful without God. He pleads with God for his presence. God's presence which distinguishes God's people from all the other people on the earth. If you don't come with us, what sets us apart? Who are we? Moses essentially says to God, I'm not going anywhere without you. Now, I like to picture sometimes I like to picture things, and I'm sure Moses didn't do this, but in my mind, this is how I like to imagine it went. That God said, you go, I'm not going with you, but you'll be successful. And that Moses was like, oh no. And that he found himself a chair, and he sat down in front of God, and he just said, and he probably hooked his legs around the the bottom like this and just said, I'm not going anywhere if you're not going with me. I'm going to sit here, and I'm going to sit here, and I'm going to sit here, and I won't leave here unless you're coming. That's how I like to imagine it. Now, it probably didn't happen just like he's probably on his knees, but it's how just as like just you go and I'll give you success. I won't go with you. And Moses would be like, there's just no way. I won't move from this place. I won't go one step from this place unless you come with me. I only want to go where you're leading me. I only want to go somewhere if you're going to be present with me. If you're here and you're not going anywhere, neither am I. I'm going to stay right here. And I don't care what you say. I won't go without you. That's how I imagine, so in my mind, that's how I imagine it wanting to go. That's how I imagine me doing it in that story. It's just, I just won't go. And he won't. And he's just like, he's not content to trade success, earthly success, for the presence of God. Just like, I won't. I'll sit here all day, and I'll sit here all night, and I'll wait until you tell me where we're going. But I won't go without you. It's how I imagine it playing out. As he's saying, I don't want stuff, I don't want success, I don't want blessings if I can't have your presence. I want you more than anything and anyone else. Knowing you and your presence is what sets me apart. And then he says, please show me your glory. Up to this point, Moses has had all sorts of crazy experiences of God's presence. Remember, he's seen the miracles in Egypt. Like loads of crazy miracles. Moses has been present for all of those. He's seen a burning bush where God spoke to him. They have the pillar of fire and cloud in the wilderness leading them. Moses has been on the mountain with thick-filled cloud, smoke-filled cloud in the presence of God on Mount Sinai. Moses has engaged in intimate conversations with God in the Holy of Holies, but Moses wants more. Moses, when he says, show me your glory, is asking for more than all the things he's just had. He's still not content. He's asking for something that will be described as the Shekinah glory of God, which means the dwelling glory of God. That's what Shekinah means, the dwelling glory of God. He's seen the miracles, he's seen the power, he's seen all these different things. But no, I want your glory to dwell with me. A presence that is life transforming. He wants the very presence of God to envelop him. Moses is passionate to know the presence of God in his life above all things. And I think we need to be provoked to ask the question of ourselves personally and corporately. Are we passionate to know the presence of God because we love him and he loves us and made himself known? Or are we simply settling for less of him than he wants to share with us? Are we simply settling for less? Am I simply settling for less? We can't not be, in some respects, products of our culture. It's just impossible not to be. And the culture we're in so often now is have it now and move on to the next thing. And we are not conditioned, and the younger we are, the less conditioned we are to persevere, to wait, to be prepared to wait and wait and wait. I think Moses would have waited his entire life and not moved from that spot. So I'll wait my entire life. I'm not going to go anywhere unless you're going with me. And yet, I can order something online and have it delivered, even the same day sometimes. Like, we live in an instantaneous world. It doesn't teach us to wait and say, show me your glory. What's that? The dwelling presence of God. Well, if I won't wait, how will he dwell with me? And yeah, he'll be with me in different bits of my day, and there's bits you can carve out, cool. But there's that heart that says, I will carve out something that says, please come and dwell with me. Just because you're wonderful. Just because to be with you is the best thing ever. Matthew 13, 44 to 46, Jesus tells these two parables about the kingdom of heaven. It says, the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure that a man discovered hidden in a field. In an excitement, he hid it again and sold everything to get enough money to buy the field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant on the lookout for choice pearls. When he discovered a pearl of great value, he sold everything he owns and he bought it. Jesus is talking about there who's someone who recognizes the kingdom of heaven, that knowing God and his kingdom is worth everything. I would give everything to know you. That you're more precious than anything else in this life. Someone who would lay down everything to know the God who created them. Someone who understands that he is more precious than any other treasure. We're going to be, in a couple of weeks' time, beginning a new preaching series. We're going to pause John. We're going to come back to John's Gospel after Easter next year. And we're going to spend some weeks partly just looking at why we gather together. Why do we gather together? Who do we gather with? What do we gather for? What are our expectations of that? Just that when we come together, it's not just Sunday mornings, but any time we gather together with anybody, why we do that, and an expectation that the presence of God should dwell among us as we come together before him. We've just been stirred that there is a journey for us to go on in that. I think church can become a tick box of going through the motions, and you can come away going, that meeting was good. And you think, great, who wants a good meeting? I want a meeting that comes where I say, oh, I met God today. I met God today. And so we're going to be spending a bit of time just going through that, looking at who we gather with, how to wait on him, and just seeing what he wants to say to us. So we're going to be doing that in a couple of weeks. And I wonder whether that there is a new season for us to step into. I mean, this is me. At this point, really, I'm just preaching to myself. I wonder whether there's a new season for me to step into, marked by a passion for his presence that somehow is slightly lacking. I've learned to do life with him on the margins, maybe. I know, because I've been a Christian a long time, I know how to do Christian things. Yet he's still, I've been a Christian 44 years since I gave my life to Jesus. I've learned a lot in that time. I know how to do it. But he has more that he wants to share with me. He has more that he wants to share with you. And so I wonder whether there's a new season for us, marked by a passion for his presence. And I wonder what that might look like for us. I wonder what it might look like for you. That he wants to share himself with us, with you, not just on a Sunday, but in our lives. Can't just be about meetings. It has to be about how I live. He wants to share himself with you every single day. In the rubbish parts of life during the week, those bits, the bits that you hate, the bits that you dread, the bits that make you really cross, the bits that just in you, those bits, we all have them in our weeks, day by day. He wants to share himself about you in those times, with you in those times. I wonder that we have a time before us to rediscover, or maybe discover for the first time afresh, the transforming presence of God with us, his glory. And I've got to be honest with you, I need to be up front with you. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what I'm doing. Really, I'm on the journey with you, so we can do that together. What it can't be, though, is something that we just make happen for 6 weeks amongst ourselves. Well, that's often what happens when we do this. Let's make much of God, and in our own strength, we can do that. We can do that on our own strength for a bit, and then kind of you run out of strength. And I just can't be bothered with that. Like, we just have to want God for God and see what he does. And keep on just asking him, would you come and be with us? And making space for him and just being like, just want to try and do whatever you say. And learn. So it might look a bit messy sometimes. Not always, maybe. Sometimes, God comes in all sorts of different ways. Sometimes he comes very quietly and sometimes he comes very loudly. And often we're conditioned to like one or the other. If you are a person who likes the quiet presence of God, where he just comes on you, he's just gentle, then when he comes and it's very powerful and very noisy, you tend to not like that. And when he comes that way, you tend to have a thought that says, gosh, will someone take a hold of what's going on and quiet this down? But if you're the other side, if you're the person who enjoys it when it's loud, he comes and he's powerful and I'm noisy and he sets me free. And you look at people who are just sitting there seemingly not doing anything, you think, God, poor people, they're missing out. Someone ought to do something about that. The reality is he comes how he wants to come, and in the Bible we see both. We see times of it being incredibly quiet and intimate, and we see times where tongues of fire come and rest upon people. Both happen. And so God comes how he wants to come. And we don't get to decide that. We just get to welcome him. And we just get to learn it together. And so we're just going to, I think we'll just close with a song. And almost today really, because this is the journey, so it's not, this is the moment where everything happens and it's done. But it's a stepping out moment. I want to encourage us. This is a stepping out moment. What does it look like to take the first step in response to him? If he wants to share himself with you, if he's calling you, if he's saying, look, I've made it so I'm going to be known, and I want to come and share myself with you, what does a response today for you look like? A first step on a journey. Yeah? This is just the first step. What will you do today to take the first step? And it might be that you need to just get before him and repent. Say, do you know, Lord, I've been ignoring you for ages, doing it in my own strength, and I need to begin by repenting. It might be that you need to do something physical. I've intentionally created at the front here space. And there is nothing special about this space compared to the space at the back at all. But sometimes you need to do something physical to respond. As a being proactive, I will make a proactive step. And so maybe as we sing this song and worship, you might just want to come and fill this space and think, I'm just going to come and I'm going to worship here. Just as a first step that says, okay, I don't know what this looks like, but I do want more of you, God. Or maybe you want to get someone to pray with you and say, this is talking about me and I don't know what to do. Would you just pray that God would help me? Or maybe it's something else completely. I don't know. Really, that's between you and God. But I'd encourage you, don't let a first step pass you by. Don't let a first step pass you by. And he will meet you. Might be loud, might be quiet, might be gentle, might be strong. He will meet you. And so I'll leave that with you. We're going to sing whatever we're going to sing. And we've got, 7 or 8 minutes more or less. But we've got a few minutes. We're going to sing. just take some time to respond. Okay?